Hi there. Maybe you know this guy. This is the famous fighter without rules Yuri Boyka. He has just got out of the most terrible Russian prison and is ready to conquer the world of mixed martial arts. But even in a nightmare, he cannot imagine what he will have to go through on the way to world fame. Yuri Boyka lives, trains and performs in Kiev. He has 10 years of a strict regime colony behind him and hundreds of underground fights in which he participated for the sake of freedom. Anyone else in his place would have given up on his dreams long ago, but not Yuri, who dreams of real, not prison titles. Meanwhile, in the Black Hills, where the fighter once sat and performed, a new star appears. A mad prisoner nicknamed Nightmare. One day, between duels, Boyka goes to take donations to the local church. It turns out that it was built thanks to his financial help, and in religion the fighter is trying to find his salvation. However, the Holy Father has doubts about his life path. But if you're looking for salvation, violence. That's not the answer. Boyka disagrees with him. He believes that the Almighty has endowed him with a unique gift and it would be a sin on his part not to use it. Therefore, he continues to train with a calm heart and soon learns from his manager Kirill that he has found a duel for him. And not some kind of underground, but a real qualification fight that can give him a ticket to the International European Mixed Martial Arts Championship. Accompanied by the manager, Yuri goes to Budapest. Boyka is aiming for a confident victory, especially since scouts are sitting in the front rows of the arena, who select the best athletes for further cooperation. The fight begins. From the very first seconds it becomes clear that Yuri's opponent is a very strong athlete. Boyka barely manages to dodge his skillful punches and a couple of times he almost gets caught, but the persistence of the opponent angers Yuri so much that he goes all in and strikes dangerous blows to the chest and head. The opponent loses the mouth guard and barely gets to his feet. Boyka is even starting to mannerise in front of the audience and celebrate the victory, but another athlete still rises. That's when all the fury of Yuri falls on him. Boyka triumphantly wins. After the fight, scouts come to him and say that they have not seen such an impressive duel for a long time. The men want to see Boyka in Budapest again and offer him to come to a new tournament in 2 weeks. Yuri promptly agrees, and later receives a fee from Kirill's hands for the victory he just received. Leaving the arena, Boyka sees that his opponent is being taken somewhere on a gurney. He is informed that he is in critical condition and will go to the intensive care unit. Yuri is seriously worried. He immediately remembers the words of the priest a couple of days before the fight. The next morning, he wakes up from a nightmare and goes straight to the training room where Kirill is sitting. Boyka starts asking him what happened to yesterday's opponent. The manager does not understand why Yuri needs this information. He still won. But in the end, he still tells the truth. Yuri can't believe it's possible. He asks Kirill what the opponent's name was. It turns out that this is Victor from the Russian city of Drovny. The manager advises the fighter to forget about it and move on, because all fighters perfectly understand the risks when they enter the ring. But Boyka doesn't even want to listen. After seeing a photo of Victor with his wife, he resolutely decides to go to Russia and try to atone for his guilt. He is not even afraid of the fact that in Russia he is a fugitive criminal who got out of prison thanks to underground fighting. Yuri orders his assistant to produce fake documents for him and makes it clear that he will not accept a refusal. While Boyka is getting to the neighboring country, Victor's funeral is taking place in the small town of Drovna. On them, a suspicious man approaches the widow of a fighter. He cynically informs the woman that the death of her husband does not affect the payment of a certain debt in any way and now the widow is obliged to work it out. "I can lighten your honor." Meanwhile, Yuri crosses the Russian border with a fake passport. He checks into a hotel and goes straight to the Children's and Youth Center where Victor's widow works. But they don't have time to talk. People come for the girl in a black car and take her somewhere. Boyka uses threats to extort from a local security guard that the widow was taken to some mysterious second job. Yuri goes to the address and discovers that this is a nightclub where fights without rules take place in the evenings. Boyka stands in the doorway and watches the fight of the undefeated champion of the club Igor Kazmir. Yuri is infuriated by the smug behavior of a fighter who is sure that the ring belongs to him and uses dirty tricks against rivals. But then he gets distracted by something else. It turns out that Victor's widow works here as a waitress. "Who are you? Are you following me?" But Yuri does not have time to talk to the widow. He is immediately noticed by the guards and taken outside. They say that the girl belongs to their boss and Boyko has no right to approach her. The guards provoke the fighter and in a few moments smartly puts the bouncers on the ground like bags of potatoes. The same suspicious man comes out of the opposite building and introduces himself as Zurab. He applauds Yuri for the show he has just demonstrated and informs him that the club belongs to him. The local criminal authority even offers Boyka to fight in his ring, but he refuses. He says he came to talk to the waitress Alma. Then Zurab resolutely refuses and orders his guys to keep an eye on Yuri. But the threats of local bandits do not frighten the Boyka. The next day, he comes back to Alma's place of work and, hitting Zurab's henchman, goes inside. At first, he hesitates to tell the widow the truth, only expressing condolences and handing Alma a letter from her deceased husband. But when the girl starts asking where they know each other from, she still can't stand it. The fight was the most. I was at the market in Kiev. Yuri asks if there is anything he could do for Alma. She replies that the only thing she needs, this is to bring her husband back from the other world. She rejects the money offered by Boyka, calling them bloody, and his killer. Meanwhile, a portion of young blood and new fighters are brought to Zurab's club. But none of them like the mafia. He is in search of a real champion who would turn local fights into a real show. And he doesn't have to wait long. Yuri appears on the threshold of the club. Boyko offers Zurab a deal. He fights in his ring, and the mafia leaves Alma alone forever. The men agree on 3 duels, but on condition that Boyko fights with the main champion of the club. Yuri agrees and says that he will hold all 3 fights in the next week, because he does not intend to stay here. There is only one but. Zurab calls Boyka's real name out loud, showing that you can't hide from his ubiquitous cells even with fake documents. My ring. My rights. After the conversation at the club, Yuri calls Kirill and says that he will need to stay for another week. The manager tries to dissuade him, but Boyko is adamant. He orders the assistant to change the ticket for another date. The next day, Alma is waiting for Yuri near the hotel. She angrily tells the fighter that she did not ask for his help, and demands to leave her alone. Victor's widow mistakenly believes that Boyko came here to win her as some kind of thing. But the fighter makes it clear that he is not interested in her, he came not to save the girl, but himself. The day of the first duel comes. While the opponents are preparing for the fight, Zurab is quite watching everything from the VIP box. Yuri's opponent turns out to be stronger than expected, but Boyko quickly pulls himself together and actively presses him. In the end, he puts the opponent on his shoulder blades, grabs him by the throat and... While he is resting after the fight, Alma brings him water. Yuri asks the girl if there is a gym nearby, because he does not want to go to Zurab's gym, there is too unpleasant an audience there. Alma says that he can't come to train at her place of work. The next day, Yuri goes to the Children's and Youth Center and studies where Victor once prepared for competitions. The hour of the second duel comes. The presenter announces that Yuri Boyko, already known to the audience, will fight against local celebrities, the Ozerov brothers. So Yuri learns that he will have to fight against 2, which of course he was not warned about. Or rather, in a sense. He's not afraid, my ring, my rules. It takes Yuri a while to get his bearings in a duel against 2, but he quickly takes the initiative into his own hands and puts both brothers on the shoulder blades in turn. Nevertheless, the battle continues. As soon as Boyka deals with one Ozerov, the second one is already right there. At some point, one of the opponents severely injures Yuri's lower back and he barely finds the strength to continue, but smartly glimpses Alma's face and, on the last spurt of will, still manages to send both opponents to a knockout. Yuri comes out of the ring limping, the whole hall is chanting his name, and Victor's wife seems to be looking at him with completely different eyes. A new day is coming. Zurab receives a policeman in his office, who is required to deliver a nightmare from the Black Hills prison to him. The policeman refuses at first, because the last time he almost lost his job because of a similar adventure, but Zurab has an ace up his sleeve. He says that for this the lieutenant will receive not only money, but also the fugitive criminal Yuri Boyko. Still not knowing what awaits him ahead, Boyko goes to train immediately after the fight. Alma visits the fighter during the class and offers to smear his back with a special decoction. But when Yuri asks why she does not leave this city, the woman is offended and throws the case halfway. According to Alma, this center, the biggest dream of her and her late husband, for which they borrowed money from the insidious Zurab. To abandon this center and the children who go there would be complete madness for Alma. After learning that Boyko regularly goes to work with Kalma, Zurab becomes jealous. He comes to her and begins to turn the woman against Yuri. It was an accident. Really? Kirill calls Yuri again and says that the whole of Budapest is covered with posters with his name. He is expected at the competitions as soon as possible. Boyko promises him that he will be at the bus stop at 9 o'clock that evening, and when he returns to the hotel room, he meets an uninvited guest there. Alma wants to find out the whole truth about what happened on that fateful day. Even if it wasn't an accident, she's ready to hear it. Then Boyko begins to tell his story. He says that he did terrible things, for which he went to prison for a long time. He was an evil man, full of hatred, until he found God. Hundreds of times Yuri fought in the dirtiest arenas of the most disgusting prisons. And when God finally gave him a chance to prove to the whole world that he was worth something, Yuri stopped seeing a man in the ring in front of him. For him, Victor was just an obstacle on the way to the most cherished dream. Yuri knows that all this is not enough to make up for the loss of Alma, but he regrets what he did with all his heart. Boyko finally enters the ring against his main opponent, Igor Kazmir. There is a fierce battle, during which they go toe-to-toe. But the opponent is playing a very dirty game, inflicts even more injury to Yuri's already sore lower back and does not even shun blows to the fuck. Boyko almost gives up, and Kazmir is already beginning to celebrate the victory, finishing off the recumbent with his hands on his back. But Yuri catches Alma's gaze in the crowd again and gets to his feet with renewed vigor. He becomes ferocious and inflicts a series of crushing blows on the enemy's vulnerable points. Kazmir is disoriented and Boyka can't knock him out with a powerful kick. Boyko leaves the ring surrounded by fans. He thinks that the job is done and he can go to Budapest for the competition of his dreams. But Zurab has other plans. He pretends to be a fool and says that they agreed on 3 duels and a battle with the champion. And Kazmir is no champion, so the local clown. Yuri is furious at such a deception, but they give him an ultimatum: either he enters the ring again, or the Alman remains the property of Zurab forever. Get your fucking here. The main fight of the evening is announced. The triumphant Yuri against the newly arrived thug from prison. Boyko sees his opponent and can't believe his eyes. The nightmare is twice as big as him. Alma, whom Zurab has placed next to him in a hypnotic box, is also very worried. The fight begins. In the first minute, Yuri loses the mouth guard and falls backwards. Everyone thinks he's knocked out, they're already celebrating Nightmare's victory. But Boyko still regains consciousness. He has a few more seconds to get up and continue the fight. He sees a worried Alma and a laughing Zurab and gathers the last remaining strength. He smartly hits his injured lower back several times and continues to fight, overcoming the pain. But his opponent is visibly exhausted and is also starting to give up. Yuri pushes the Nightmare with blows to the chest, fights with him in the stalls and uses a fighting technique, and then Boyko rejoices, not even suspecting that guys with batons are already waiting for him at the exit. At the last moment, he notices that Zurab roughly grabs Alma and takes her somewhere out of the VIP box. But Yuri does not have time to stop the villain. Zurab's guards start beating him. Victor's widow sees Boyka's body before leaving and screams, thinking that he is dead. People are fleeing the club in a panic, thinking that a raid has begun. However, they still do not have time to hand over Yuri to the police. He gets up, knocks out all the guys with batons and gets shot by another mafia guard. Zurab hears a shot from his office, takes a gun and starts running from the club with Alma under his arm. On the way, he exchanges fire with Yuri, inflicts several more wounds on him and almost reaches the car, but Boyko turns out to be faster. Alma and Yuri are left alone. She says that Boyka needs to go to the doctor urgently, but he doesn't even want to listen to her. Yuri admits that he didn't have enough before.